management here to please turn on your webcams. I will read out the questions from the audience. They will be also visible on the screen. So this is an open panel and all the speakers are welcome to put forward their views on each question. So the first question is, how do you measure agility collaboration between people?
So it's for anybody, or it's sorry?
It's an open panel. It's for everybody.
Ah, okay. Sorry, I don't know. Okay, maybe I can share something. In my case, for example, okay, imagine that you have a portfolio, right? So a portfolio, right? You have several programs, DevOps programs, some software programs, and so forth, right? And of course, before creating programs in your company, you are going to have strategic goals, right? Your company needs some strategic goals, right, for a year. I don't know, time to market, customer satisfaction, and so forth, right? Your entire company needs to work in terms of those goals, right? Right. So your portfolio is going to try to move those strategic goals, and your teams are going to work in this portfolio. So the collaboration, for example, is okay. How those teams are working together in different initiatives to try to reach these strategic goals, right? How the development team number 1 is working with the team from testing number 2, from marketing number 3, from operation number 4, and so forth. So you can measure in that way, right? What is the interaction between initiatives? For example, one number is, okay, if you define some 10 key initiatives for your company, you can measure, okay, in those initiatives, what are the teams that are involved, how they are working together in this. It's only work for one team or 2 teams, or maybe this initiative is cross, right? You get different teams from different areas working on that. So that is a measure that can help you on that, in collaboration, right? Between teams, between the company, in terms of strategy, in terms of your portfolio, in terms of your business goal at enterprise level. So that is a possible measure that I can share with you.
Okay, this is Ramesh. I would like to add here. Pretty good question. Primarily, if you look at it, the whole idea behind getting DevOps was to get the people factor out of the entire equation. And we are still talking about people. So people are so important. And thanks for asking that question. No matter what technology comes in, what kind of tools we bring in, collaboration among the tools, like we talk about orchestration of various tools and make it a harmonious delivery system as far as DevOps is concerned. Similarly, people are still involved. So people factor, people, process, technology, being the 3 pillars for time immemorial as far as IT is concerned, and it is going to be there forever, I believe. So I agree with George that definitely it is important the various teams that work still, be that development, be testing, be infrastructure, be it release management and things like that. You need to set the goals. There is a measurement and metrics for each to make your DevOps successful. So when you get into your DevOps model, you have the blueprint at the beginning. And you, at the beginning itself, you come out with what is that you are going to measure as far as your success is going to be concerned. And once you set your goals and you have your metrics in place, the coordination and collaboration of various teams is only related to how much you are achieving your metrics and your goals. So that is what I would sum up. Good question. Liked it.
I would like to add also something about it, is that eventually when I'm asked how can I know that there is a real agility and there is like a good collaboration, it's first make sure that all the relevant roles, part of a product, are part of the planning, are part of the sprint. So if you have an organization where you have QA and R&D and DevOps and support, each one in a different organization, make sure that all of them talking together as much as possible. And if they as a team took a commitment to complete something on time and meet those, then you can be sure that this is a real collaboration. It's just about meeting the goals that you set.
Will anyone else like to weigh in on that question? Okay, so moving on, how much of a role does formal training play in adopting a DevOps culture?
Wait, what about the previous one? Why has DevOps gained promises over the last few years? It's pretty simple one. We moved to cloud, we moved to open source, and we moved to so many technologies. If in the past we have an R&D group that just develop everything themselves, and then in one monolith application, now that we move to much more complex, the need for synchronization and the need for automation is so high, then this is why it's became like this. Okay, nobody actually developed the whole product. AJ, scalability, high availability. Nobody develop it anymore. Everybody just use open source as much as they can. So I think this is what actually moved this.
Yeah, I can come to this. I mean, when we look at any kind of adoption, right? So adoption typically has multiple phases. There is sort of a phase where innovation happens, and then there are phases of small scale adoption, large scale adoption, and then there is obviously a bit of lag for people who are on legacy to eventually adopt, right? In this whole process of adoption, I mean, if you look up any marketing jargon of how a product gets adopted, you would notice that there are multiple phases of it. And this sort of holds true to even DevOps. Is the first phase, probably about 10 years ago, is where people were innovating and saying, okay, this is something works for us, but it was not still mass scale in terms of people seeing and learning from it. But I would say it's even way beyond people seeing and learning from it. I think it's taken for granted that you have to be in this model if you have to compete, if you have to be successful, and if you have to be better than your competition, right? So I think it's already in that phase, and the why it has gained obviously is because it's people have seen benefits, like the DORA report, like the DevOps, the State of DevOps report, State of Cloud reports. Everything sort of is a very clear indication on 600 times improvement deployments. People are looking at how Amazon is deploying like 1 million times a day, and how features are being ready. I mean, it's never would you hear from Amazon who would come back and say, okay, I need a functionality, it's really burning. And they would not come back and say, okay, my next release cycle is 3 months away, so come back and then we will look at it, right? So there are benefits. People are looking at these benefits, and when you see it very clearly, adoption is rapid. I think we are in probably the final stages of adoption rather than in the intermediate states, I would say.
What I feel, I agree with both of you, and just to add to that, a different perspective. Last 4 or 5 years, I think we have been living in a world of fail fast, number one. Number two is, we call it as MVP, that is a minimum viable product. And most of the time it remains a MVP. That's a different thing. But then I think DevOps actually helps to fail fast and recover fast. And probably people are seeing that as also one of the reasons to adopt it. I can quickly change, make things happen, and then if it is not working, because it's all collaboration of tools, go back and refresh, rebuild, and deploy it. It becomes much easy. But then you need to have a good DevOps model to achieve that.
Okay, so now we go on to the next question. How much of a role does formal training play in adopting a DevOps culture?
Maybe I could share this one, as some of you who attended the session or the case study that we presented from Amadeus. So before we get into the formal training, so we all know that DevOps adoption or any transformation, there are two things. One is a mindset and second is a skill set. The first, before we get into the formal training, the mindset of adoption into the DevOps is very important. And then a training is required first to get a bit of a literature and also to identify when the gaps are identified between the parties on saying an operations and a development. This training would definitely help to bridge the gap to do that, because they are trying to do something which they would have never done into this. So it plays, but what's very important is a urge to learn and get into this. So that has been the story from our side.
If you look at all of the dojos and the environments that have been created, I think that shows that the idea of getting people together to learn not just the tools, but the culture and the new ways of working in this process is very important. And whether or not you call that formal training or not, this concept of bringing the team together and working together with coaches in this new model has been very successful at many companies and really has helped this transformation. And watching companies that have done things like dojos or garages or whatever the company calls them to bring the people together to get that new way of working have done better and have moved faster to the new ways of working because they've experienced it. They've worked in the tools, they've worked in the new process, they've gotten that experience. And that is absolutely critical to get these new ways of working embedded in the culture, in the way people work. And you've got to do that some way. And efficiency of getting that done, having the whole team work together has been very useful.
So moving on to next question, please share your experience with automation and tools for release orchestration.
Okay, I can go for it. I was just waiting for somebody else to take it, but let me start. I mean, this is a gray area always, right? Do you build something which is specific for you or your organization, or do you start adopting tools which are cloud ready, or maybe even look at CA Nolio, or which is like the CA release automation, or Xenia deploy, etc. So there are many tools in the market. But to be fair, the way I have seen in most of the organizations, you can do a good job with Jenkins, right? It's all about how you build your code and how good your processes are, right? Especially when you get to larger organizations, there are multiple manual processes which sort of delays or causes delay in your release process, right? I will take a simple example of change management. I mean, you are waiting for somebody to manually go into a change control board, approve it, and once it's done is when you can take through the process, right? But if you have really good DevOps practices and like how Ramesh said, if you know how you can fail fast and recover fast, you probably can get rid of a lot of these processes, which enable you to sort of test in production, test on live customers, recover from those situations, canary deploy, etc., which basically simplifies your whole process, which logically also means you can have simpler tools to do the same thing rather than complicating it by building big tools around it. But if you are able to fail fast, it really does not matter. I mean, you can have a Python script to do your release automation. And once you fail, you just recover quickly. And as long as you know you can recover quickly, you don't have to worry about a lot of these things.
One of the biggest, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Iroz.
I think one of the biggest challenges in release is the other side of release, not just the automation piece, but the tracking piece. And so automation is absolutely critical. Everything, no manual steps, it's all got to be automated, but you have to have the tracking. So, and you don't want users doing that manually, you want the system tracking. And so many people use those release process tools specifically for the tracking or the auditing. You need to have a track. You need to have the audit process so I can go source to load. I know what's deployed where, I can understand what's deployed where, but how you do it is really dependent on what you're doing. When you're doing containers, you're going to do it differently if you're deploying into an environment. So you want to make sure you have the automation in place for all the pieces, and then have the right tracking to make sure you have all the pieces. I have seen companies like CSG announce they got rid of their CAB. Deployment automation provides all the deployment into production, and so they don't need that manual approval at the end. It's really approve the fact that you want this and have all the testing in place to allow it to go. And so you work through that process, but you have to have that tracing and tracking implemented some way to make sure you know what's where and you know how it got there, and you have that audit track for it.
Yeah, so I would add another thing from a different perspective about the release automation tools. There's other two considerations that you need to take into account. The first one is money, right? There is a lot of paid solution, CloudBees, Earnest.io, and other tools which, you know, they're perfect, right? They are the best thing that you can even think about it, but eventually it's cost money. Now, sometimes if you have a small team and you really like one or two people in the team, and it's better to buy those products because you don't have to invest so much in learning those. But if you are a big organization or you have a lot of developers, try to use open source. And then Jenkins, like Aaron says, it's a great solution. And again, you know, the second thing, except pricing, is experience in the market, right? You have to hire people. You have to know that people actually knows how to work with this tool. Now, I know that everything can be learned, but I think Jenkins has, you know, a large community, and this is also another consideration that you should take into account. Thank you.
I want to add for this, what you're saying, from what I'm thinking now, in another organization, when you're starting to get into the DevOps journey, so we started to bring a lot of different tools and different tool sets, something for unit testing, something for testing automation, something for security, etc., etc. And as you go bigger and bigger, you have a lot of tools, a lot of tool chains, very complex to manage all this, and also it's become costing a lot of money. And as you're getting mature more and more in the DevOps process, especially in big organization, we will go more on platform based, like taking the AWS suite or Azure DevOps or other platforms that are available. But moving from a combined tool set with a lot of different tools from different companies into one tool chain or one platform that can give you all the service, so then you can start managing all these different platform and different products, and just focus on the DevOps delivery and DevOps value.
Okay, so we move on to the next question. What are some best practices for tracing release auditability? Any tools in this space?
there are many different tools in this space. And so you can look at urban code release or urban code velocity, or you can look at the CA capability, or you can look at the cloud-based capability. There are all sorts of different tools that provide that kind of tracing and tracking. There are lots of them. The important thing is choosing what fits best in your pipeline, provides the right capability for you, and provides the audit and tracking that you need to do the work that you're going to do. And as was pointed out, this tool chain can get very complex. And so making sure you're picking the fewest possible tools that you need to fit into this process, to bring them together to get what you need, and not add extra just to have the extra. But there are lots of tools that provide that tracing and tracking so that you can see that auditability. You can create your own, but it's to see what you need, understand your requirements. And some industries are more regulated and need more auditability, and other industries have fewer requirements. You need to understand your requirements, what makes it easiest for your developers to get the data, their operations to understand what's running where, the team to be able to run the system efficiently.
I can add on to this as well, right? I think one of the biggest bits here is to know what you want to measure, right? Auditability and traceability is the biggest bit. Is you really should know what you want, right? And there are organizations who want to deploy frequently. There are organizations who want to deploy as stable as possible. There are organizations who want to ensure there is like crazy amount of factor of safety, etc. Right? So the core aspect here is first to know what you want, and the second bit of traceability is actionable insights, right? So logging everything, monitoring everything. I don't think there are enough eyes and ears to keep looking at or hearing it. So it's about exactly knowing what the problem could occur. Exactly knowing what you want to do and fixing that as quickly as possible. And exactly like what Ramesh said earlier as well, as long as all of these lead you to lower mean time to recovery and eventually lower number of failures itself, right? So that's what you should measure. Auditability specifically is maybe even put like how Facebook does, they rate developers, right? So if you have auditability in which you say, okay, X developer, when he deploys to production, he causes no problems, and you keep giving him higher points, and over a period of time, you know, if this is a developer, you give him all free hand to go deploy, because you exactly know he's not going to cause problems, right? So if you have auditability and also some kind of intelligence around it, that's where you need to lead to. Yes, again, I mean, I repeat, this is what I told in the my talk or our talk as well, was this is not a one-day journey. So measure, even in your measurement and auditability, learn fast, make things which you can learn from and then implement.
Yeah, just to add on that, as far as the tool is concerned, there is a plethora of tools. I think everybody agree as far as DevOps is concerned, and it's very tricky to suggest a tool if you don't know what you are doing from an outside perspective. It is very difficult to answer that. But then if you had gone through this, I stayed back on the Louis presentation where he mentioned, which I agree, and most of us will agree, that DevOps is basically a customized solution for every application that you're developing. So you need to look at when you implement the DevOps, so which tool will actually fit into the entire your cycle. Is also you need to look at that as a parameter. You just may not want to just look at, okay, release is one part of it and what will fit in there, number one. Number two is that, auditability is again, as others have said, you need to first define what is that you need to audit. Okay, so your goals and what you want to measure, you need to set that first, number one. Number two, then you choose a tool which will fit into your entire tool gamut of your DevOps model. I think you should take that as a approach rather than going out and saying that what is the best tool to implement here. That's my perspective. Thank you.
Okay, so I have one more question with me. It says, I experienced that my team implemented tools just to get to DevOps maturity level X. They didn't know what the added value in that context was. The maturity framework was the goal. How would you prevent these situations?
Oh, a maturity framework is never the goal. It's just something that we do to try to reach something. In my case, my experience, basically the goal is time to market. The goal is fast flow, right? That is the goal, right? So a maturity, a DevOps self-assessment for maturity is just a good way to try to organize your house, right? I try to set a roadmap, right? Try to organize your effort and have a vision about how you need to improve. But that is not the main goal. That is only support, right? And the goal needs to be something, an outcome. You need to think in outcomes, right? It's not about technology anymore. In my experience, it's about outcomes. How you can use technology to try to deliver more value, faster, with quality, time to market, customer satisfaction, experience, and so forth. So that is the goal. That DevOps self-assessment maturity is a good way to organize your house, to try to help you with your roadmap, right? To try to understand what are your strengths, your weaknesses, and so forth, right? It gives you an orientation about what you need to do to try to reach this goal. But that's it. It's quite important.
I think that from an operation level, what you need to do in this case, so you need to get for these tools maturity. So these tools need to give the value and need to give the ability to move faster. But from operation level, you need to bring them that they are deployed in a robust way, in a big way, and in a way that they are as close as possible for the out of the box of this. So the operational or technology depth around them will be very, very small. And then you don't need to, for 1 year or 2 years, just to manage to make it better, fixing and stuff like that on the tool chain.
I can share another thing about it. It's when I used to work for AT&T, they actually created something that's called DSO scorecard, which is like DevSecOps scorecard. And eventually, what the scorecard mean you have Jenkins, you have SAS, Dust, you have Sonar, you have all those tools. But it just was good for leadership maybe to get the idea, but it actually doesn't show how you do DevOps, because and this is why when you're trying to get, I understand the question, because you feel like, okay, I'm trying to to catch something which it's not going to change the way that I'm working or doing DevOps. So I also agree that eventually it's about commitment, about meeting the target that you put for yourself, and less about the tools. So it's important, the tools, okay, it's give you much more security in your pipeline, and there is a lot of advantage, but it's only like 30% out of it, in my opinion.
Yeah, just to add something more, I worked for Verizon for more or less 5 years. I worked at Verizon for more or less 5 years. And something that I remember from that work is that the Verizon data transformation strategy was tooling agnostic. That was something great, right? Because when we were involved in that program at Verizon, we thought that, okay, what we are going to use, Jenkins and so forth. No, tooling agnostic. We need the outcomes. We have what that is the most important part. The rest, you need to self-organize and decide what technology you want to use and move in that direction. So that's something really, really great about it. I think the best approach is the tooling agnostic approach. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's one of the interesting bits here. I totally agree with what has been told. I question back the question itself in some ways, where I would say, if your maturity index showed that you moved up the maturity ladder just because you adopted a tool, there is something wrong in that maturity model itself, right? So you can't just move from stage 1 to stage 2 by just implementing Jenkins, right? It's an impossible state. But if you actually move from stage 1 to stage 2 by adopting Jenkins, maybe there is something else that you have done right. And probably it's better for us to acknowledge it, and then you've actually succeeded at it. And maybe you're challenging the wrong thing, right? So there are two ways to look at the same thing. Yes, maybe somebody did magic by putting in Jenkins, but they did some other magic more than just putting Jenkins in, right? So look at it very clearly. For sure, stage 5 or the final stage of a maturity index on any kind of a maturity model cannot be achieved by just adopting two tools, and you have to be agnostic, which logically means if you have flexibility of plugging out, plugging in any tool, if you have flexibility of replacing any kind of API, backward compatibility, everything that you can think of in best coding practices, that's where you are headed to continuous improvement. Continuous improvement is not a final stage. It is a stage of continuously improving. So you can never get to that state ever. So look back at your maturity model is what I would say.
I think we have heard the answer from all of you. So thank you, dear speakers. It was an excellent and enriching session, but we'll have to stop here. Thank you for your time. If the audience has any further question or queries, kindly drop an email to contact@unicomlearning.com, and we will get back as soon as possible. For further info on our summits and trainings, please log on to www.unicomlearning.com. Lastly, I would like to thank our esteemed speakers and excellent audience on behalf of the entire team of Unicom for helping us make this event a success. Thank you, everyone. Good day and take care.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Thank
Nice
you.
meeting you.
Bye.